Northern Ontario mayors lay out their priorities to the provincial government. The victim in a canoe fatality hailed as a hero. And a visually impaired city man calls for intersection improvements. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Mayors of the 5 largest municipalities in Northern Ontario have outlined 6 key priorities to provincial cabinet ministers.
Infrastructure, energy, and revenue sharing are among the top items on the list. And while they are not new requests, the local representatives on the group say they will continue to bring up priorities until there are results. Dennis Ward has more.
The Northern Ontario Large Urban Mayors Group sat down with 6 provincial cabinet ministers to pitch their top priorities. They include a renewed collaborative relationship, sustainable funding for infrastructure, affordable power prices, immigration and workforce development, more funding for research, and a fair sharing of resource revenues. Acting Thunder Bay Mayor Joe Verderamo says the requests may not be new, but it was important to present them with one voice.
Explain to government that we have the same issues and we work together. And they realize now that Northern Ontario is up and coming, and it's going to be the economic development future for the province.
There were no commitments from the province. Northern Development Minister Michael Gravel, who took part in the meeting, says he doesn't think mayors were expecting any. There could be changes on the way, though. According to Gravel, the $110 million Northern Ontario Heritage Fund will be altered, and a previously announced $100 million infrastructure fund for small northern communities could be changed to include large municipalities.
There hasn't been a final decision on that. The fact is that, my understanding is that Minister Murray has not made the final decision on that. I'll be rolling out some adjustments in a very positive way to the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation relatively soon that will reflect that regional component, the opportunity for communities to work together on programs that make sense for them from a regional perspective.
Both sides have called the meeting positive. Verderamo says municipalities have had success in the past with these efforts and are looking forward to more. Dennis Ward, TBT News.
One of the commitments local politicians were hoping for at the AMO conference was a decision on the future of the Thunder Bay generating station. While the Minister of Energy is said to still be committed to ensuring the region's energy needs are met, no real plan has come forward. It was last November that the planned conversion from coal to natural gas was halted. Regional politicians who believe there will not be sufficient amounts of power for future growth have been pushing for that to still happen. NDP member Gilles Bisson was in the city today. He says the conversion was promised in the last 2 elections and not followed through on. He accuses the Liberals of spending $600 million to cancel 2 gas plants to save Southern Ontario seats, but says they're not prepared to do what's necessary for Northern Ontario. Bisson says there should be a plan in place to do some sort of conversion at the Thunder Bay generating station.
So that we were able to maintain the employment and that we're able to also to be able to maintain the needs of the electricity. So we're saying we're committed to that. If it's conversion, let's make sure that we do it. If it takes 2 or 3 years to do that, let's take the time. But let's at least carry through on the promises that are made and not always have a government that says one thing prior to an election, then another thing after the election.
OPG recently was awarded a contract to keep at least 1 unit of the coal plant in operation until the end of the year. All 3 political parties are committed to phasing out the use of coal by the end of 2014.
A 31-year-old man who drowned this past weekend is being called a hero for helping save a little girl just before he went under the surface. Jordan Desfossés from Peace River, Alberta, was one of 4 people in the canoe that tipped over on a section of the Kaministiquia River, also known as the Dog River. In this report, Tara Allaire speaks with the girl's mother and the victim's friend, who was with him during the tragic incident.
Michael Watson says it was meant to be a relaxing day fishing on the Dog River with his son Jake, friend Jordan Desfossés, and Desfossés' niece Zoe. But it turned into a nightmare.
Me and Jordan decided to take Jake and Zoe into the canoe and go have some fun, do a little bit of fishing. We pushed out to the water and we were, just relaxing, ready to go cast. We cast, the canoe kind of rocked and it tipped over and we went into the water. we all kind of looked at each other and kind of laughed at first. It was kind of funny that, we dunked the canoe, but I realized that we had to get the kids back to the shore.
In the minutes following, Watson and Desfossé worked together to get 4-year-old Jake and 3-year-old Zoe safely to shore. While Watson swam Jake safely to land, Desfossé held Zoe by the boat to prevent her from floating down the river. Watson says when he returned to get Zoe, everything seemed fine.
I asked him if he was okay, and he says, yeah, and then as I went back with Zoe, and when I came back, turned around looking for him, I screamed his name, and then I couldn't see him.
Watson described the water that day as cold with a slow-moving current, adding Desfossé was a good swimmer. He says it could have happened to both of them as neither of the men had their life jackets on. Watson says his friend's actions in saving Zoe were heroic. Her mother, Katrina Norman, says she's thankful that Desfossé saved her daughter. She remembers him as a doting uncle to Zoe and says the two were extremely close.
He was there when I was pregnant, and pretty much every day we were over there. They made cupcakes, they went swimming, they had picnics, they did everything together. Hilarious guy, he had a hilarious personality and good heart all around, always there for everybody who needed him.
Desfossé's death brings the total drownings in the Thunder Bay detachment to 5 this year. OPP are reminding swimmers to be aware of water conditions and encouraging boaters to practice water safety by wearing a life jacket. Tara Allaire, TBT News.
An apparent pet hoarding case that was discovered in Thunder Bay last week doesn't appear to be as bad as the District Humane Society had originally thought. 12 cats and 2 dogs were removed from a property on D Street last Thursday. 5 of the cats had to be put down days later. Humane Society officials had feared that another 20 to 30 cats were still in the home with no food to eat, but a follow-up investigation today has shown there are about 12 cats currently living in the house. Humane Society Executive Director Glenn Wilson says the man who lives there has brought in many strays, and the ones found today all appear to be healthy.
They are being well taken care of by the owner of the cats. He's taken in all these strays, which they're now his, but he's got food, he's got water, he actually cooks food for them. So right now we're in the assessment mode right now as far as if we will be removing some of these animals.
Wilson says the main issue with the home is related to the hoarding of possessions by the owner, which he thinks could be a health and safety issue, but he says the animals currently living there are in no danger.
There could be a hefty price to pay for those found responsible for a major gas leak earlier this year in Thunder Bay. The natural gas leak on Red River Road in June led to the evacuation of hundreds of people in the area and shut down 10 city blocks. The line was clipped by City of Thunder Bay staff who were working in the area, but senior city staff alleged the locator lines on the ground were not marked out correctly by Union Gas. The Technical Standards and Safety Authority and the Ministry of Labor continue to investigate the incident. A spokesperson says the focus of the investigation is to determine why the pipeline strike occurred and whether the excavator had proper locator lines for underground utilities. Potential prosecution includes fines totaling $50,000 for an individual and imprisonment of up to 1 year, or $1 million for a corporation per charge.
A Thunder Bay man who is visually impaired is calling for audible pedestrian signals on the Thunder Bay Expressway. The issue has come to light after he was struck by a car when crossing the intersection at Oliver Road. Justin Miller does have some vision up close, and because of that, he enjoys some independence. But about a month ago, while on his way to work, he was struck by a vehicle when walking his bike across the intersection. The collision broke 2 bones in his leg, causing significant mobility issues. Police determined that no one was at fault for the incident, but Miller thinks an audible signal at that intersection could have saved him from injury. The City of Thunder Bay currently has audible signals at several crosswalks, and Miller says these devices should be at all high-speed intersections across Thunder Bay.
I just want the public to be aware of it and maybe hope that this could start, maybe having the city kind of take a look at this issue and realize that it's something that's vitally important. Because anyone, whether you're able-bodied or have a disability, you deserve to have as much, independence as you can.
Miller says the incident has left him wary of crossing intersections, and he plans to have assistance in the future. The Ministry of Transportation has responded, saying they are not looking at audible signals along the Thunder Bay Expressway. According to the MTO, requests for these devices come from the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. The MTO and the CNIB then work together to address the proposed installation. CNIB officials were not available for comment today.
There's more bad news for Thunder Bay beekeepers. A recent study shows bees are ingesting pesticides containing a form of nicotine, and that's killing the species at an alarming rate. Now, the Ontario Beekeepers Association is calling for a ban on those substances in time for the 2014 spring planting season. Cheryl Holmes has more.
Bee populations across the province have been suffering for several years due to mites invading their colonies, and now beekeepers have a new threat: neonicotinoids. The synthetic copy of natural nicotine is used in insecticides on farmers' crops and mainly on cornfields. It's buried in the soil, but when crops are turned, the insecticide gets into the air and mixes with the pollen bees collect. The record number of deaths prompted Health Canada to study dead bees and find a cause.
A 70% loss is directly caused from the neonicotinoids. So if that's the case, then that's detrimental to all of us.
An average decrease of 60 to 70% was seen in colonies throughout our region last year, and in some cases that number was as high as 99 or 100%. Because of this, the Ontario Beekeepers Association is now calling for a ban on the use of neonicotinoid insecticides in time for the 2014 spring planting season.
And with everything else that's lowering the resistance, like the mites, varroa mites, tracheal mites, foul brood, European foul brood, and all the just other diseases that come along with it, it's an added thing that we have to worry about that the poor bee can't do. They can't manage that.
The Thunder Bay Beekeepers Association is holding a public meeting with local MPs at the Kekabeka Legion on September 10th to discuss the ban, voice their concerns, and raise awareness about the problem. Cheryl Holmes, TBT News.
Thunder Bay Hydro has received a President's Award from the Infrastructure Health and Safety Association. That award was earned by completing 250,000 hours of work without a lost time injury. Hydro President Robert May says it took just over a year to achieve those hours from January 26, 2012 to February 28th of this year. May says since then they've continued to rack up impressive results. The utility is currently at 573 days of work without a lost time incident. May says the goal by this time next year is to have completed 500,000 hours of work without a lost time injury. Hydro crews, meanwhile, were busy today carrying out upgrades on a portion of Pacific Avenue. The road was closed as a result between May Street and Simpson Street.
Singer-songwriter Justin Hines made a stop in Thunder Bay last night as part of his North American Vehicle of Change tour, and 100% of all funds raised at each stop go back to local charities. Hines says the idea came to him because he wanted to do something meaningful in a unique way. The proceeds from each show go to a different charity. Last night's concert at the Italian Hall was in support of the local chapter of March of Dimes.
I just hope that people kind of recognize, all the good that's still going on in this world. We're inundated constantly with, a lot of the negativity and things that are wrong. But, we visited communities where we're seeing good things happen constantly, and we just want to shine a bit of a spotlight on that. And here in their own community, there's so much great going on. So just hopefully people, tonight feel that and understand that.
It truly is one of those things that we hear about, pay it forward, and you really see that with Justin and his crew, that they're doing this for so many different communities. Not only are they raising funds to be able to drive their tour across North America, but then to be able to offer their abilities and their talents to different organizations to be able to help their communities in different spots across Canada and the U.S. It's fantastic.
Hines' next stop on the tour is Kenora, where proceeds will support the Kenora Association for Community Living.
Well, turning to weather, Fiona, it was another above seasonal day, at least temperature-wise, as the heat wave continues, but this time the winds have started to pick up.
Yeah, a very hot start to the day, a little bit more muggy earlier in the day, and that was because the winds were coming from the west. However, as the afternoon continued, this winds kind of rotated around, started moving in from the northwest as they picked up speed and gained momentum, which was why the Humidex reached 36 about noon or so. But we topped out with our high of 30 a few hours ago, and the humidex has actually been dropping. So we're getting a little bit less of a factor when it comes into the humidity, and it's all because of where the wind is coming from and the fact that it's picking up, which means it's going to help cool things down a little bit if you've been finding it just a little over the top temperature-wise. But across the region at this hour, temperatures are quite seasonal. To the west, 22, 23 seems to be the magic range for most areas. There is a little bit of cloud pushing in to the Red Lake area, but for the most part, fair amount of sunshine. Up in Greenstone, just a few clouds, and Sault Ste. Marie, mix of sun and cloud. And Thunder Bay at this time is at 27 Celsius. Now, let's talk about possible thunderstorm alerts that are through the region. We've got Greenstone and Manitouwadge and down into Chapleau with a thunderstorm watch in effect. We've got a warning up into Kapuskasing and Timmins, so for the most part out of Thunder Bay's range, but if you do have friends, family, or if you're heading eastward, something to keep in mind. For those of you maybe a little younger than ourselves that are heading out to the Youth Festival tonight at the Marina, well, beautiful night for it, 25 Celsius. Winds will continue to be a little bit blustery at times from the northwest, 25 to 38 kilometers per hour, which means it's going to start to feel a little bit cooler a little bit earlier in the evening, but all in all, beautiful night for it. Lots of music down there. Should be a lot of fun. In fact, we'll drop down to a low of 11 overnight with a few patchy clouds, and winds will continue to be a little bit blustery at times, should taper off overnight. And then as we head into Thursday, well, most of the cooler air is heading beyond us, and we're going to stay in this more cooler zone. So what you're going to see is more seasonal values, a little bit less humidity to deal with, but still well within the range of what would be considered summer-like temperatures. So don't panic, summer is not leaving just yet. I'll have more details on what's going to follow for Thursday, Friday, and that all-important weekend that's to come.
All right, thanks very much, Fiona. There are new allegations that the Syrian military has once again deployed chemical weapons against its own citizens. We'll have the latest on that story and more as your Wednesday News Hour continues.
Regime opponents say the rocket attack was apparently launched while they slept, just 20 minutes from Damascus. Panicked survivors cover their faces. Others, barely alive, struggle to breathe. Arrived just 3 days ago.
The United Nations Security Council scheduled an emergency meeting today to look into allegations of a chemical weapons attack in Syria.
Anti-regime forces say there was an attack near Damascus that killed hundreds of people, and they're blaming the Syrian government. For its part, the country's military is denying it took part in any attack. Nala Ayad has the details, and a warning, viewers may find some of the images in this report disturbing.
This isn't going to be easy to watch. And it's only a sample of what appear to be images of Syrian victims of a chemical weapons attack. An attack that, if verified, may be the world's worst in generations. A distraught doctor says he's lost colleagues today and had 50 children pass through his hands alone with no signs of life, he says. Regime opponents say the rocket attack was apparently launched while they slept, just 20 minutes from Damascus. Panicked survivors cover their faces. Others, barely alive, struggle to breathe. Thousands of them, according to doctors, showing symptoms of exposure to nerve gas. For activists and experts alike, the scale of the apparent attack suggests only the Syrian regime could have been behind it. But the army immediately denied it. These allegations are completely false, says the spokesman. Still, the appalling amateur pictures prompted a cascade of calls for an immediate investigation.
If verified, this would be a shocking escalation of the use of chemical weapons in Syria. We are determined the people responsible will one day be held to account.
Many countries, including the U.S., already believe chemical weapons have been used in Syria's bitter conflict. There was evidence before today to strongly suggest it. But it took months of negotiations with Syria backed by Russia before UN inspectors were allowed on the ground to try to verify those claims. They arrived just 3 days ago, their movements severely restricted. But several countries now want them to verify today's apparent attack. Russia blames the opposition forces for the attack. Without Moscow's agreement, it's their video, their words against the regimes. And the inspectors won't get anywhere near. Nala Ayed, CBC News, London.
Egypt's former president could soon be a free man. A court has ordered the release of Hosni Mubarak in the corruption case. The prosecution says it will not appeal that ruling. This means Mubarak could be out of jail as early as tomorrow. The 85-year-old is awaiting a retrial on charges of failing to prevent the killing of protesters during the 2011 uprising.
American soldier Bradley Manning was sentenced today to 35 years in prison for leaking thousands of military documents to the website WikiLeaks. Briar Stewart has more.
When Private Bradley Manning walked into the courthouse in Fort Meade, Maryland this morning, he knew he was facing years in jail. It only took a few moments for the judge to deliver the sentence, 35 years. It was much less than what prosecutors were calling for, but for the small group of Manning supporters who were gathered outside the courthouse this morning, they thought Manning should be praised, not punished.
He should be held up as a hero, just like this sign says.
Last month, Manning was convicted of leaking 700,000 confidential U.S. documents to WikiLeaks. Today, a spokesperson for that group called the sentence a strategic victory because Manning could be eligible for parole in less than a decade. But Manning's lawyer, David Coombs, sees it much differently. He wants Manning to receive a presidential pardon. He says his case is just one example of the United States cracking down on whistleblowers instead of protecting them.
The case of United States v. Bradley Manning is a watershed moment in history for freedom of the press. We need to decide what freedoms and individual rights we are willing to give up in the name of national security.
Manning's lawyer will file the paperwork next week asking for a presidential pardon. In the meantime, the military district court will review Manning's case, but that's expected to take months. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Fort Meade, Maryland.
Senator Pamela Wallin was already on the hook for $121,348 after an audit of her travel expenses. But the final bill is even higher than that. The Saskatchewan senator has been ordered to pay back a grand total of $138,970 after a further review of expense claims. So far, Wallin has paid back $38,000 and has promised to repay the rest once she gets an order from the Senate.
A long-running inquiry into Alberta healthcare has wrapped up. and it's concluded that some patients in the province got to jump the queue because of who they are or who their doctor knows. Terry Reith has that story.
So in the end, after 23 days of hearing testimony from 68 witnesses and $10 million, this is the final report of Justice Vertes, and in it, he concludes there was not widespread queue jumping or preferential access within Alberta's healthcare system. He does, however, say that there are smaller cases that where people have some opportunities to perhaps game the system just a little bit, but this is not widespread. One of them that he offers two recommendations around is the use of private clinics. Now, this relates to the case of the Helios Clinic in Calgary, where people were able to get it for colorectal cancer screening within a matter of weeks as compared with years for the rest of the population. Now, Justice Vertes, two very specific recommendations here, and this is one of the cases where he did find there was preferential access given. One is to strengthen up the rules around private clinics. Now, the Helios Clinic, people pay $10,000 to join, and they get some pretty lavish health care. So new rules around those sorts of clinics. The other thing, new rules around who qualifies for screening, very specific rules around screening. The other thing he talks about is wait lists. When you have longer wait lists, you have more people trying to find opportunities, trying to find ways around those wait lists. So Justice Vertes says in his second recommendation is we need shorter wait lists, and he also says they need better management of wait lists in Alberta. Now, this health inquiry was called by Premier Alison Redford in response to allegations that there had been widespread queue jumping in Alberta. Well, that disproven. There are 12 recommendations on the table now, very common sense recommendations that now go back to the government and the Premier to act on. Terry Reith, CBC News, Edmonton.
Target had a lot of people paying attention when it arrived in Canada. Today, the discount chain released its most recent results and reported a 13% drop in profits. The company says much of the drop was related to its ambitious expansion, but a recent satisfaction survey suggests Canadians haven't been impressed with the retailer. Ron Charles reports.
Welcome to Target. You want to come on through?
When the first Target stores opened in Canada earlier this year, people lined up in the cold. Inside, the U.S. retailer promised gleaming aisles filled with discount household and clothing treasures, just like at its stores south of the border. 5 months and 68 stores into Target's Canadian expansion, and this is what you hear from bargain hunters.
It's not what they say it's going to be. It's nowhere near what they said it was going to be. Walmart, hands down, is the place.
They could improve a little bit better on selection as compared to States, because there are a lot of products that are not marketed here.
The Target here in Canada is a lot more expensive than the Target in the U.S.
A recent survey by Forum Research seems to bear out those sentiments. It placed Target near the bottom of a list of 9 retailers in Canada when it comes to customer satisfaction. Today, Target announced a 13% drop in its overall profits in the April to June period. Company executives say much of that had to do with the expected cost of opening dozens of stores in Canada. But in a conference call today, they also noted Canadian sales are not on target.
We've seen a slower than expected ramp up in sales following the grand opening rush.
Retail experts say Target's experience shows U.S. stores coming to Canada have to live up to their famous names.
Ultimately, the consumer is smart, and the consumer understands that if they're not, if their expectations aren't met, then they're simply not going to frequent that store.
That's nice. It's very nice.
Target is hoping U.S. fashion designer Philip Lim will help recreate some of its opening day excitement. The company brought him to Toronto for a fashion shoot. He designed a whole line of low-priced clothing for Target just in time for the back-to-school market. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
Some video for you now from an unbelievable crash on a Michigan highway. Take a look. A pickup truck goes airborne as it crashes through a guardrail. And then it just crashes to the ground, as you can see, with that boat in tow. That video was posted by someone driving beside the truck. She said it was like something out of an action film. Now, despite the unbelievable plunge, the driver is expected to make a full recovery from his injuries. But we're For sure, the injuries are significant, I bet. All right, let's take a look at activity on the markets now. In Toronto, the TSX dropped 97 points today to 12,573. Wall Street saw the Dow fall 105 points to 14,897. The NASDAQ was 13 points lower at 35.99. The Canadian dollar fell almost 0.8% to 95.48 cents US. Gold down $2.50 to $1,370 an ounce. Oil was down $1.26 to $13.85 a barrel. Despite their dismal play this year, some numbers I was looking at recently show that the Toronto Blue Jays aren't suffering too badly at the gate. The numbers are up over last year. Television audiences remain strong as well. And some added incentive for Blue Jay fans to watch tonight as well.
Yeah, you could see Ichiro hit the 4,000 career mark for hits, but that's including his totals in Japan as well. Pete Rose, of course, the all-time Major League hit leader. So even if the Blue Jays lose tonight, Ichiro, very popular player, hopefully he hits that milestone. Well, the Jays will hand the ball to knuckleballer R.A. Dickey this evening in Game 3 of their 4 games set in the Bronx with the New York Yankees. The Jays have the worst record in the majors in one-run games, and we've got video evidence of that in Game 2 of their doubleheader last night. Toronto once again would open the scoring. Yank starter Philip Hughes unloads the wild pitch. That allows Rajay Davis to score from third, and it's 1-0. Robinson Cano would drive in his 5th run of the series already, drawing New York even with a bloop single to left in the 3rd inning. Both starters sharp in this one. Mark Burley gets A-Rod to whiff in the 4th. He would strike him out 3 times in this one. Sliding to the 7th, Jays up 2-1 until former Jay Jason Nix gets the arms extended with his 3rd home run to left. Nix would decide the game in the 9th with a walk-off single to make the final 3-2 for the Bronx Bombers. And in senior men's baseball last night, the Thunder Bay Wolves knocked off the Boston Pizza Red Sox 5-2. 47 Canadian NHL players will attend this weekend's Olympic orientation camp. 5 of them hail from northwestern Ontario. Kenora's Mike Richards will join Thunder Bay's Patrick Sharp, as well as Eric Mark and Jordan Stahl in Calgary for the invitation-only camp, which runs Sunday through Tuesday. Eric Stahl made the 2010 team, which took home the gold medal in Vancouver. Now his brothers, first-time camp attendees Mark and Jordan, are keen to follow in his footsteps. Ryan Benazzo has more.
Up with it again. He's on the ice with Iginla. Iginla scraping forward. Sidney Crosby, the golden goal.
After watching the drama unfold in Vancouver back in 2010, Mark and Jordan Stahl are hoping to be a part of it in Sochi. They're among 47 players who will spend 4 days in Calgary taking part in an informal orientation camp, the first step toward piecing together the final roster. Brother Eric, who won gold as part of that 2010 squad, is vying for an Olympic return as well. And it would be an honor, said Mark, after an off-season workout at the Fort William First Nation Arena to help him defend the gold medal.
After watching them win in Vancouver was pretty cool, and you know, obviously he had a great experience and a lot of great memories from that, and you know, obviously makes you want to do it that much more.
It's not easy making that team, and there's a lot of good players, and but you know, hopefully I can have a great start to this season, and just to be mentioned and be a part of it would be exciting.
Team executive Steve Yzerman has already made one thing clear: to make Canada's final roster, players will have to skate.
Jordan Stahl leaks it through Pavlik.
Jordan Stahl feels that plays to his strengths as a two-way forward, but knows he'll have to pay extra attention to the little details in order to ultimately catch the eye of team decision makers.
I think I just got to find a niche for myself on that team, and whether it's penalty killing or face-offs or whatnot, you know, just doing all those little things that I can do well, right, and just go from there.
With the big ice, you got to be able to move, and you got to be able to skate and cover a lot of ice, and you know, I think that's a big part of our big strength of my game is getting around that ice and playing on that big surface.
Ultimately, it'll be a discretionary call for Yzerman and head coach Mike Babcock, and the Stahls realize there'll inevitably be a lot of great names left off the final roster.
And there's just so many good players that you really, there's always going to be a lot of guys, you know, that could be mentioned that could be on the team, and so it makes it kind of interesting and to talk about.
The benefit of being Canadian is they have a large pool of great talent to pick from, and you know, they got a tough job, and you know, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes.
Ryan Benazzo, TBT Sports.
The Lake University Thunder Rolls hockey team has added goalie Justin McDonald. The 5'11", 180-pounder played with the OCN Blizzard of the Manitoba Junior League last season. And joining the three Stahl brothers, along with Patrick Sharp at the Olympic orientation camp this weekend in Calgary, will be New York Islanders blue liner Travis Hamonic. The 23-year-old from Manitoba is the youngest defenseman to be invited.
It's obviously something I've had circled for a while now.
Travis Hamonic is eager to attend next week's Olympic orientation camp. He's one of 47 players who will be in attendance, and the 23-year-old is the youngest defenseman to receive an invite.
To get a chance to get there with obviously those players I'm going to be surrounded by, it's a pretty humbling experience, and I think that there's no better feeling or better thing you can do in a sport than to try to represent your country.
Hamonic has represented Canada numerous times before at events like the World Juniors, but because of insurance issues, there'll be no actual on-ice sessions at the orientation camp, as it's more of a meet and greet with other players and staff.
We'll have a chance to obviously get acquainted with each other, and I think a lot of guys play against each other, but really don't know each other too well. But you know, some guys you do know really well. You played in previous tournaments, so it's a chance to really get to know each other. You know, we have a chance to familiarize yourself with the coaching staff, the management staff, the systems that the coaches do want in play.
Here's Hamonic all alone in front. He scores! Travis Hamonic to tie the game at 1.
The former Wheat Kings blue liner has been on the developmental fast track with just 3 NHL seasons under his belt. Last year, he had 3 goals and 7 assists in the lockout-shortened 48-game season.
And after the Isles finally made the playoffs last year, he sees bright things in their future.
That was a step definitely in the right direction, but nowhere where we want to be yet. We know what the ultimate goal is in mind. You know, maybe last season, the way we finished and head into the playoffs, that we maybe turned a little bit of heads, and that's great and that's awesome, but we know internally what we can do, and I think that's just a standard that we've set now.
Thunder Bay's Jeremy Kirk is 5 shots off the lead entering round 2 at the Ontario Juvenile Boys Golf Championships in Renfrew. He opened with a 3 over par 74. He's tied for 13th place. And week 9 of the CFL kicks off tomorrow night in Montreal. The Alouettes will be without starting quarterback Anthony Calvillo due to a concussion when they take the field against 5-2 BC. It will be the Lions' second game in 5 days.
No doubt. I mean, any time the game of football is played in 5 days, which is not meant to be played in 5 days, it's a tough turnaround for both clubs. And I think for us traveling east, I think the biggest thing that I'm explaining to the men is to really make sure that we do not change our approach in our preparation, a singular purpose in how we prepare, because we did that last week. And certainly a mental focus and approach, because we can't really play physical in practice. We've got to get it all done in the classroom and in our minds, and certainly don't change the approach. The attitude is required, and now that kind of game was on tape. When you analyze that tape was unbelievable. It was sensational. Special teams were remarkable. The physicality of it, you know, the running to the football. So now that it's on tape, let's do that again. And I think, as the men know, I don't care what happened last week. It's all about preparing for this week, and certainly that's the approach.
Winnipeg will go with former NFLer Max Hall as their starting quarterback for their rematch with Hamilton in the Steel City Saturday. Coach Tim Burke explains the rationale behind that move. The Bombers have lost 5 in a row.
I thought he did some real positive things in the game, and I thought he moved the team pretty well. The other reason is I think he's got a lot of intangibles and brings his teammates close together.
I'm excited to get another opportunity, and again, there's some good things happening in that last game. I thought at times we moved the ball well, and I thought I was seeing the field. And the game slowed down as it went on, and I just wish things would have gone better in the second half. But I was happy with my performance, but there's still a lot of things I can get better at. We got to move forward, really focus on this week. I like where things are going with the offense, and we got to perfect it a little bit. But I expect us to play well this week.
3-time Sprint Cup champ Tony Stewart will miss the rest of the NASCAR season with a broken right leg. This week's stop is the Irwin Tools race Saturday night in Bristol, Tennessee. Denny Hamlin won it last year. Jimmy Johnson, though, continues to lead this year's point standings. On the Formula One circuit, it's the Belgian Grand Prix Sunday morning. Sebastian Vettel with a 38-point lead atop the standings. The IndyCar circuit is in California for the Sonoma Grand Prix on Sunday. And the Cleveland Cavaliers have signed Canadian Anthony Bennett to his guaranteed rookie contract. The NBA's first overall draft pick can make almost $23 billion over 4 years. Anthony is a very happy rich man today.
Not a bad way to start off your career, right? First 4 years on the job, 23 mil.
Not too bad.
All right, thanks, Randy.
All right, well, we're keeping things light tonight with back-to-back episodes of Happily Divorced. And with more, here's a complete lineup on Teletalk.
Tonight on Global Thunder Bay, starting at 8, it's Big Brother. And things get heated during the Power of Veto competition. Then at 9, it's an hour of Happily Divorced. First, Fran can't believe she forgot Mother's Day. Then at 9:30, Peter sets Fran up on a date that sends her back into the arms of an old love. And at 10 on Camp, the new mayor is performing same-sex marriages and everyone wants one. Over on CKPR Thunder Bay at 8, some paper packers go outside the box on Dragon's Den. Then at 9 on Republic of Doyle, Jake juggles multiple cases while trying to protect his ex. And at 11:35, George has Tuesdays with Maury author Mitch Albom. Teletalk is brought to you by Points, the traffic ticket specialists.
Past few days, it's been very hot, upwards of 40 degrees Celsius. Fiona, is there any relief in sight? I know some people are getting a little bit tired of the heat.
Well, believe it or not, there is relief in sight, and it's all coming from the west. Now, today, we already saw a little bit of an improvement. The Humidex only hit 36 instead of 40 like yesterday. That's always good news if you're finding that a little bit too hot. But lots of sunshine. It's that wind from the northwest that's going to keep things a little bit cooler, and you'll see it happening in a lot of locations. So let's take a look at what's going on across the country. We've got lots of sunshine in the west, and temperatures all pretty much in the low 20s. So Vancouver at 22, Prince George at 20, Edmonton matching that, Calgary at 22. More seasonal temperatures in Saskatoon, also at 22, as is Regina. And that's where the wind really starts to become a factor. It's kicking in quite a bit from the west-northwest, 50 kilometers per hour at times. And another place also seeing quite a bit of the wind is Winnipeg. They're currently at 23 Celsius. And that wind from the northwest has kept the Humidex values down all to the west. Where that isn't happening is further eastward. And the Humidex is climbing today, despite the temperatures that you see here right now. In Humidex values, Toronto topped out at 36, Ottawa topped out at 38. Humidex in Quebec City topped out at 37. And even in the Maritimes, that they weren't able to escape the heat, because Fredericton at this hour is at 27 Celsius. The Humidex racked up 37. And Charlottetown, a little bit cooler, under just a few clouds. Halifax actually was matching Charlottetown's temperatures earlier today. It's just in the last hour started to drop a little bit, so they're getting a nice cool evening with a fair amount of sunshine. St. John's, though, a little bit on the cool side. They're 15 Celsius at this hour under a mix of sun and cloud. They hit a high of just 18 today, and that's partially, again, due to those gusty winds. Now, we started out with a touch of rain first thing in the morning. High pressure center has been moving in, bringing more sunshine for tomorrow, but the flow, as I said, from the northwest is going to keep things cool. Now, as the high moves on, we're going to get a little bit of flow more behind it, and that's going to keep temperatures nice and seasonal, so we don't get too cool. You don't want it too cool at the end of August. But it means another mild and dry day for Friday. Unfortunately, for the weekend, we could be in for more risks of rain for both Saturday and Sunday. But temperature-wise, you can see what's going on. The heat more towards the southeast, and then tonight, cooling off in much of northwestern Ontario. Thunder Bay still in a nice double-digit zone. And then the heat starts to move in further to the west. You can see it building, but we get the cooler air right along the lakeshore. And if you keep an eye on that over the next few days, that zone is going to stay just slightly cooler than everywhere else. So Thunder Bay, not as warm as it has been, but still within summer values. Now tonight, single digits in much of the region, a little bit further eastward though towards Greenstone and Marathon, we see the double digits. And then tomorrow, seasonal values, low 20s and a fair amount of sunshine across the board. At this hour, we're at 27 Celsius, mainly sunny skies. Tonight, a low of 11, and that's due in part to the west-northwest winds, a little gusty at times, but tapering off quite nicely. Start the morning 13, mostly clear by noon. The winds are going to continue to be from the northwest, so 22 Celsius. Don't have to worry about the Humidex values, 24, but you do want to watch out for that UV index. Will be 6, which is considered high. So we head into Friday, partly sunny, 23, and that's where we're going to stay for Saturday with a possible couple of showers, maybe even a thunderstorm. 60% chance of showers on Sunday was the the humidity increases and the temperatures warm up. 27 Sunday and 28 on Monday.
All right, thanks very much, Fiona. When we return, we're going to show you some pictures that are taking the internet by storm. And as you're watching, we'll see if you can figure out which is which.
want to show you the pictures that are taking the internet by storm. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are full of pictures like these, capturing a poolside lounger or a lazy day at the beach. But are you sure those are actually legs and not hot dogs? When a Canadian blogger discovered the similarity, a new internet joke was born. We'll admit some of these are pretty obvious, but others just might keep you guessing.
Found the key. Look for the bony knees. That's the sure giveaway every time. Let's recap our top story of the day. The AMO conference is wrapped up, and the 5 mayors of the leading cities in Northern Ontario have issued a list of 6 priorities to the provincial cabinet. We'll have details on that for you tonight on the late edition. For now, that'll do it for tonight's look at news, weather, and sports. A reminder for news on demand, log on to tbnewswatch.com. Thank you all for being with us, and we'll see you again tomorrow.